Hello, everybody. Michelle Sanchez, licensed clinical social worker, social work professor. And I'm here to piggyback the last discussion that I had on how the brain processes data and how that can lead to categorization and constructs in reality that are helpful or harmful. And what I want to talk about today is how that is tied into ethics. Ethics are the principles and values that shape what we choose as appropriate behavior. And so, for example, according to the National Association of Social Workers, one of our dominant values and ethics is do no harm to a client. So, how does that tie into how we think and organize data? Well, if I organize data and I meet a person, and a person is a vast, each individual is a vast data set, physically, spiritually, cognitively, emotionally, relationally, socially, occupationally. Okay. And there's no way anyone can fully know anything within any one person. But if I encounter a person, let's say every day at school or every day at work or on the social media, and I notice that this person has all these different dimensions, small caps, lower caps, A's, B's, C's, D's, X, Y, Z's, algebraically speaking. That this person, these are all their, you could look at this as phenotype, genotype, behavioral expression, communication style, attachment style, codependency style, a repertoire of memories. However you categorize all that. Ethics ties in because if I decide that I'm going to extract these variables, these are all the caps, and I'm going to import all the caps into here, and I'm going to ignore all this data here about a person, and I decide based on the label of this person that I don't like this label because I've heard these people are oppressive, or these people are thieves, or these people are immoral, then what happens is my brain oversimplifies who this person or who this person belonging to a larger aggregate defined by that label is, then we have a real problem. Because what I do then is I use a label to define a person, such as race, national origin, gender, age, sexual orientation, etc. And I use this label to assume this is what this person's identity is. And I ignore the vast complexity within that person. And my brain just finished watching Fox or CNN or a YouTube video, and I'm all I'm all fired up because of what I just watched that said, hey, these guys, they're trouble. Or this set of politics, trouble. This group of people, ignorant. This set of things that the news or media or books lenses, what a lens does is a lens takes light, the whole light, all the colors of light, puts it through this thing. Okay, you guys have seen this image before. The regular white light or all-inclusive light and all bandwidths of light is filtered, and then you see it in categorized colors in certain ways. And then further lensing of logic creates these categories, and further lensing of logic, on and on and on. Now, these lenses can be provided through our family of origin, and our family of origin tends to have a lot of bias, ethnic bias, religious bias, all kinds of cognitive bias, attachment bias, gender bias, on and on and on. Then we go to school and learn, and then another school and learn, and another school and learn, and then you add Facebook to all that, Instagram to all that, TikTok to all that, all your friends at school, You're going through all these lenses, and the brain gets overwhelmed. And then what it does is says, God, I don't know what to do with all this. Let's go back to this. Okay, I don't know what to think about all this. I don't know what to do with these people. Let's just keep it simple, and we're going to categorize. Small caps, large caps, truth, lies, lies, truth. So the ethical dilemma in that is we deny and minimize critical pieces of people. So what I want to invite us to contemplate is that people and groups of people, if you have to put a label on them, and this is the problem of using a label, of national origin, gender, orientation, spirituality, religion. Those labels are helpful at times in ways because we need to be able to communicate and express certain dimensions of identity. But if our identity is trapped in those particular labels to self or others, then vast amounts of who we are gets lensed out. The ethical problem of that is I cannot see the whole person, and therefore my categorization says, I don't know what to do with this person because they're Republican, they're this, they're Democratic, they're that. Okay, now, as a Native American, and obviously genotypically expressed a white-looking person, I'm very blended, but someone could see me and make a lot of assumptions and filter out and put me in a category that does not define my whole identity. As social workers, if we do this to ourselves, to clients, to groups and community, then what happens is we make a lot of assumptions about identity. Ethically, we can do harm because ethically our brains are already deciding through cognitive bias that we know something about someone. And the truth is there's far more diversity within a group than there is diversity between groups. We already know this genealogically, plants, animals, we share way more in common of a very diverse, robust group of identity than categorically. When we start to categorize according to polarizing labels, or we insist people use certain types of labels, and then we reduce ourselves to a label, then that creates a dilemma under ethics. So while we don't want to deny and minimize the importance of how someone might identify themselves because we could get confused, we also need to be very careful because we reduce ourselves to that particular identity. Now, there's a lot more we're going to talk about that in the field of social work, but it's really critical that right now we understand how lensing shapes view and how that's tied to ethics. So right to self-determination, right to autonomy, as long as you're doing no harm, is an important construct. And if you come from a background that tends to minimize or deny how certain people might express that or look at that, then you can unknowingly create a power dynamic of power over instead of power with, because you're controlling in your own mind how someone should categorize themselves, categorize their behavior, and so forth. Now, the simplest thing to do to avoid all overgeneralization is look at individual behavior. Instead of using a vast label of identity, we quit trying to identify according to labels. I mean, there's already a whole genre of data that talks about the problem of race, okay? Even the problem of ethnicity is very problematic. And the challenge of culture is very problematic because culture, if we talk about culture and link that to ethnicity or link that to national origin, even in that there can be tons of stereotyping and assumption that we might not intend or realize. So it's fair to say, oh, you're from South India, I can anticipate that you might be part of a certain type of religion or part of a certain way of cultural expectations or norms. But I need to ask a lot of questions because There's a lot of diversity in southern India that I could do harm if I assume someone because they're from southern India, or I could do a lot of harm assuming someone is white and I ignore part of who they are, or I assume someone is black, or I assume someone's Christian. And I've heard all this rhetoric about Christians, or I've heard all this rhetoric about Muslims, or I've heard all this rhetoric about the left or the right, and it's polarizing and oversimplifying. And then I do harm by saying, you know what? I don't really like or agree with that group. And because I don't like or agree with that group that I assume holds these cultural norms or these values, instead of asking questions and looking at the person's behavior. And so, are the behaviors conducive of love, or are the behaviors conducive of harm? Now, we all have different definitions of what harm versus love looks like. And that's another video for another time. But I want to at least establish how ethics tie into categorization, sometimes in a helpful way, but sometimes categorization can really impair ethics. And that's why we have standards in the United States that I think are very important to not judge and assume things and oppress people based on all these different categories, because the categories tend to be how humans oversimplify. Oh, you're from here? That means you're like this. Oh, this is your skin color? That means you're like this. And instead, what that forces us to do is say, rather than make assumptions about you based on your religion or your age or your color, I need to look at your behavior. And I will make judgments based on behavior. Now, judgment is a whole other vast topic that's very sensitive. And again, we'll cover some of this later, but I wanted to at least start with understanding how categorization is directly tied to our ethics. Thank you.